I hope you've had a great week. This week I trained about, it was about 170 leaders on a few subjects. We talked about conflict management. We talked about, how you get your best thinking going and your mindset. We talked about prioritization and decision making. In one group, both groups really, they've had a lot of change within their organizations, and there's a lot of volatility. So I taught a little bit about psychological safety and how trust needs to be present in order for that to be possible, right? And then we talked about a thing called the VUCA framework, VUCA, which stands for volatility. Obviously in today's world where everything's really volatile, right? And then there's uncertainty, not knowing kind of how things go, and then complexity. There's a variety of things that, drive all of that. And then ambiguity is the last piece. And really just kind of knowing where you're at with VUCA can help you kind of figure out where you're going to go. So if things are really volatile, having a really clear vision and having clarity in kind of what you're doing as a leader will help you. And that same thing applies for you as an individual, right? When there's volatility going on, if you have a clear vision of where you're going, you can handle that volatility and get through things. So I was thinking about how I could use a metaphor for both groups, and recognizing, in their jobs, we have concerns and we have worries, and all that makes sense. But, life is that way. And there's an interesting thing that happens just day to day that we do every single day that has volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And for me, it was driving into Chicago both days. I had an hour to an hour and a half long drive for a couple of days. Now, in fairness, it was pretty easy because I let my car drive me. Full self-driving really took away a lot of my concerns and worries, to be honest with you. And I had a lot more psychological safety, I guess you could say, because the trust was really high with the car. I mean, it's got this neural network, right, where it's learning from all these cars around. It's got cameras going all the way around the car, and I can only see as much as I can see. And so I extended tremendous trust, smart trust, to the car to get me down there, and it enabled me to think about my presentation, the things I wanted to say, review my notes. I set my iPad up on a magnet right just to the upper left-hand corner of my, very large screen that we have in these Teslas. And it's an iPad mini, and I've just set it there, and I had my presentation there, so I could just kind of look at it. And so the car knew I was looking forward and not down and away, and so it just didn't bother me. And so I had full self-driving the entire time. It was awesome. But as I'm driving down, I was thinking about this group. Everybody experiences this VUCA every single day, right? When we drive our cars. But yet we don't panic when we drive our cars. I mean, some do, and you can. Obviously, things can go awry. You might be in a big hurry, and all of a sudden there's a crash up in front of you, and there's absolute, stoppage of cars, and you're not going anywhere, and you're kind of stuck. And now you've got to flip a different mindset, right? Where, it's what it is. I can't control this, right? And so because it's out of control, it's out of your, ability to change what's going on, unless you can get off the road and take a different route. You have to just kind of change how you're going to think through this situation. But what is interesting is you will drive down into the city, and lest we forget, there are thousands of cars that are in and around you as you're doing this drive, whether you're driving yourself or the car is driving you. But we're talking like lots of heavy vehicles going high rates of speed all around you. You don't know how they're going to decide what lane they're going to go into, how fast they're going to go. Are they going to see you? Are they going to cut off you while you're driving? Are they looking and texting and not paying attention? I mean, there's so many variables, right? So you have volatility, you have complexity while you drive, you have a lot of uncertainty, and obviously there's ambiguity going on that entire time. But yet you're hurling down the highway as well, right? At a high rate of speed, probably. And you're putting everybody else at risk around you just as well, and yet you're fine. You're comfortable in that. Why? Because you've done it for so much of your life, perhaps, right? You've kind of become an expert at driving in a large sense. And so you have all kinds of psychological safety about the scenario. You know, if you do a lot of driving in the city every single day, you've got a lot of different ways you can get to your final destination. You know the routes, you can adjust, you can make those changes, and you're mentally prepared for it. But yet at our jobs, at your work, you go into hyperventilation on different scenarios. And when chaos enters, you freak out, you lose it, right? Maybe it's, one person said, I go, well, what's the deal? Like, why are you so comfortable going down the road and not so comfortable at work when there's chaos and uncertainty and all that? And one person said, well, it's because, at work, these people are kind of like family. I trust them. And on the highway, I don't really care. And I'm like, yeah, but when you have your family in the car, you do the same thing. So isn't that interesting, right? And so it is a mindset is the whole point, right? It's how you look at it, which determines how you'll react and respond to it. And so, that's in large measure what it is I've created this YouTube channel for, and why I'm working on a book about this idea of what do we do in these moments, right? And how do we manage through them and keep our cool, not live in our emotional part of our brain, but in the rational part of our brain. And we talked about ways that, we can manage stress. And I love Dr. Andrew Huberman. I listened to a podcast of his on stress management. It's like 30 minutes long. It's not very long. He just goes through some different tools. And obviously stress is a good thing. It's not just a bad thing. We have our body puts us into stress moments because it needs to activate different, organs or different parts of our body and our brain to manage through whatever it is we're going through, right? And one of the tips that he gives to help slow your heart rate down, and I used this when I was doing some running for a couple of years. I completed a 50-mile ultra marathon a few years back, and in that preparation I was trying really hard to keep my heart rate at a certain rate, and that was typically between 130 and 145, and I found that when I could keep that heart rate, I could just keep going on my running, right? And you have to work up to this, obviously, but I got to a point where I could run a 9.5 minute mile at a heart rate of 135, 140. At my age at the time was like 50, 51. That's pretty good, I think. And I mean, I'd only been running for a couple of years, inside of a couple of years, because I kind of stopped after 2 years. I hit my goal and I just kind of quit. But the point is, when I was running and my heart rate would elevate, I would do something that we do, or you see people do, when, like, say for example, they're crying really hard. If somebody's been really crying hard, you'll notice they'll do this and then they breathe out. Well, in running, if you take these, or when your heart rate's up, if you take 2 quick breaths in and then a long extended breath out, and it doesn't matter if it's through your nose or your mouth, as I understand it, and you do that several times, it's going to bring down your heart rate. And it has to do with your diaphragm, and your diaphragm changes, and it moves up or down, and it puts pressure or takes pressure off of your heart, which then changes the blood flow, which is really, really cool. And so it's a helpmate. It's a tool to get you through things. And so we talked about how would that be used at your job, your day job, right? So if you have to, present, maybe that day for me, right? I was presenting one day with a group of about 50 or so. And the next day I was meeting with a group of about 120 in a very large ballroom. I was mic'd up. There's slides that I wasn't controlling. There was a production crew, and I was walking around and everybody's at tables. And so I had to engage these people for 90 minutes, keep their attention, help them come in and out of the conversation. I had to remember everything. And so it was quite a bit, and it was kind of a custom presentation. Plus I had people there evaluating me. I had the CEO in the room. So there's a lot going on. And so on the way down, I practiced some of these things where I would take these breaths and I would control my stress, right? But the other side of that too was I decided how I wanted it to play out. I'd prepared. Could I have been more prepared? Sure, you always can be. But, what I did was I self-talked, I told myself like, hey, this is going to be a great day. We're going to have an awesome time. People are going to participate. There's going to be great engagement. I'm going to discern well, and I'm going to pace this right. And I'm going to stick to some conversations a little bit longer and not worry about the other slides and the time, because I know my end in mind. We're going to land right. And so I just talked myself through this, and it set me up for success. And guess what? It played out. It was awesome. People were engaged. I was able to talk to the CEO ahead of time. I learned some great things from him. It helped me shapeshift my presentation. And people were really involved. And it was a great, great day together. So that was a little bit of how my week's gone. And February's gone really well for me. And, I just continue to stick with this idea of reinvention. And I've had a few people, poo-poo that whole idea relative to me getting a Tesla and, you don't reinvent yourself and a car's not going to reinvent you. You're right. Duh. My mindset's going to reinvent me. I'm learning how to trade right now, trade options, and I'm looking at futures as far as trades go right now. And it's great. I'm learning, I've got a long way to go. And there's a lot of, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity with this whole learning piece, right? And it's frustrating at times, but I also know that my brain is just working the problem when it's frustrating. And so I have those tools to help me, work through the conflicts that I'm experiencing as I go through these changes, right? And so we also talked about conflict management in a couple of those conversations that I had this week in the training that I was doing. And the big deal with conflict management is, number one, in most cases, you just have got to face the conflict, right? Being honest and transparent with people, facing it. Dr. Jordan Peterson, I'm not sure if you know who he is, but he's a guy that I really have followed a lot lately and in the past several years, actually. But he has this metaphor that he talks about, and it's a narrative in a lot of these fantasies or mystical movies like Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, or even in Peter Pan, where what the person needs to go and get is often in a place that they least want to go, right? So it's something like the thing you most need is most likely in a place that you least want to go. And so where is the gold, so to speak, right? Where's the gold? The gold is often found in a cave, in a dark cave or a dark, deep place that's very hard to get to and scary. There's often a dragon there, and sometimes the gold's in the belly of the dragon. And so that which we need the most is in the place we most fear to go. And the reality, though, is the reason why it's there is because you need to fight to get to it, right? And when you do get there, it is so worth it, but you're capable of it. And so confronting what you fear will lead to innovation, will lead to, a happier place in most cases, right? And so, I made some career changes and it was scary. But once I did it and I completed the decision, I began the decision, I realized, oh, it's not so bad, right? Running a 50-mile race, that's insane. I wasn't a runner. And so, but I signed up for a race 6 months out. just as I started running. I was like running for a month, and I signed up for a 50-mile ultramarathon. In my preparation phase, I ran a marathon for the first time in my life, solo, and it took me like 5.5 hours. So what? I took my time. It was all throughout a golf course at my house. I just ran that golf course for most of that, and then some on the road, but it was undulated and whatever. I did it. And I worked my way towards a 50-miler, and it took 1.5 years for me to get to that 50-mile ultramarathon and complete it.
And here he comes. He did it. Miss says thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
50 miles.
He did it.
Daddy! I was watching Allocate. Dad, I was watching Allocate a
Good
lot.
job, honey.
And what I realized was once you start, the fear is behind you, right? So it's just in the start. And so if it's at work and it's a conversation that you have that you're nervous about, prepare for it, prepare properly as best you can, and then just go. You'll find out, as you know in your life, right? You've had other areas of your life where it's not been so bad, that you'll have, it'll be fine, you know? And there's so much good on the other end of the initial, it seems so bad. And it's just a matter of just kind of going. So I bought a Tesla, you know, that was full of fear with that. I was full of fear with that purchase. This is something I will say right now that is frustrating about the Tesla FSD. I'm in a 2-lane right-hand turn. No turn on red except from the right lane. No turn on red except from the right lane. But when this car's in the left lane, it just goes. So, you know, it's not perfect, right? But by and large it is. I'm learning from it. So I took it off of FSD so I could kind of get through that. But I bought a Tesla, just kind of going back. I bought a Tesla because I felt like there was a lot of gold on the other end of that decision, and it would change things for me. And sure as crud it has. And you people in the comments that have nothing better to do with your life but then to make just really unfriendly, I would say, anger-filled, you know, what's your end in mind? To tell me or us in the comments, you know, that Tesla is really it's a Teslaca or swastika, whatever comments you're making that really have no, there's nothing there. You know, for you who dislike Elon because he's aligned himself with Trump, you know, get over yourself, right? The car is still what it is. The company's doing great. The technology is amazing. The person is not somebody who you agree with. Fine, you know, it doesn't change the fact that this car is what it is. It doesn't change the fact that he's an amazing innovator. Is he going to make some mistakes? Of course he is. Everybody does, by the way. But to put things in there like, you know, it's the most unsafe, it has the most casualties. Well, you know what? A gun's going to have a lot of casualties if somebody doesn't use it properly. A car is going to have a lot of casualties if somebody doesn't use it properly. But if you use the car properly, it's the safest car. I don't know, what's a safer car than a Tesla? The frame around this thing, the amount of protection that you have on this car, there's so much proof of this, it's ridiculous. So it's fine if you want to make your comments, I don't care. You just kind of show us who you are. If you want to disagree, I don't care, that's great. I mean, I love disagreement. It's freedom of speech. It's awesome. But for me, I don't really care. I don't care that you say what you say. It doesn't bother me. Cross a line and YouTube doesn't solve that for you. And by removing you or flagging you, then I'll just delete you. I haven't deleted one comment off my any of my YouTubes. I'm on a total tangent, right? Anyway, I hope that your February ended well. There's still a little bit of time left. I hope you're looking forward to an awesome March. I will be doing a video showing my wife's vehicle. And also, what do you want to know? What do you want to know about this car? I'm also going to do a video, I think, with me just kind of showing me in the car. I'm like 6'5", a big dude, and I'd like to show like the versatility of this car and how comfortable I am in it, and I have to figure out how to do that. So that's one thing, as well as some of the accessories that I have. So I think there's a lot of videos on this stuff, but I can show those things too. So what is it that you very much want, that you're terrified to go get, but you just know it's the right thing for you? You just have to go do it, right? The thing you most need, again, is most likely in the place you least want to go. And so these are things that I'm doing. That's been the theme of me for the past year. I am going into places that I least want to go, knowing that what I most want is there. And I'm just going for it. And it's paying off. And I'm really glad. So I hope you'll do the same. Thanks for watching. If you haven't liked and subscribed, please do. If you have comments that are value added to help people, then please do comment. I love it, because you are teaching more than I'm probably doing, so I love it. Just please do be respectful in your comments. You can challenge. I think that's great. I think we should challenge each other, but let's do it appropriately, and let's do it in a way that invites dialogue so that we can all learn and not just simply point fingers and tell people why they suck. Thanks, and have a great day. Anyway, just don't be a jerk about it, I guess is what I would say. Add value, help us learn from each other. We don't have to all agree. We can absolutely disagree, and that's fine. What I find is birds of a feather flock together. So the majority of the people that probably watch my content are more like unto me, I think, than not. But I do welcome the diversity of thought. I think that's important. So I'm all for it. I got a guy running full speed behind me. I don't know why. Hopefully he gets to where he's going. So anyways, I do love diversity of thought. I think it's welcomed. I think it's important. But I also think it can be done with kindness and respect. And if you do that, by the way, people are way more apt to listen to you. Way more apt to listen to you. And I think if you want to be listened to, it's a good consideration. So if you're dealing with conflict, like I do sometimes, and we all do, if you're dealing with volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, VUCA, watch that framework, and it will be helpful to you in trying to figure out how to get clarity and improve yourself however you need to.